Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where we're giving our final thoughts on Fog of Love.
It's no longer foggy.
Well, we've uncovered the story of our characters. So if you've not seen it, we've just finished playing through the I Know What I Want love story, which is 4 chapters. It's probably the longest out of the 4 love stories in the core set, but we also felt like it was the one that captures the most fullest relationship. It's about 2 couples that meet through dating and then don't want to have a baby, but could still have a baby. Yeah. 2 couples, 2 people.
2 people.
A couple. And
interestingly, in our playthrough, the baby didn't really come up.
No, I did have a card that brought a baby up, but it didn't feel like it was right.
Yeah.
And that's something I want to talk about, because here's my central posit for this final thoughts as the topic for this discussion, because I've played this a bunch now.
Hit me. See, I've only played this the once.
So you've just played this with me now, and that's it. I've played this a few times with different people, and with varying degrees of success. And this actually reminds me of, in a way, of something like Consenticle or The Mind, where the mechanics of the game are not really what's important. What's important is the stuff that prevents you or changes the way you interact with those mechanics.
Right.
So, if you play this as a very mechanical thing that's all about manipulating sliders and trying to achieve your destiny, it's kind of tedious.
Yeah.
But if you get into the right mindset, if you play to the story, if you justify your decisions based on this information here, based on your traits, and to be fair, the game tells you this is what you have to do. It says it over and over again. But if you're really committed to it, and committed to the emergent storytelling, it is great.
Start again. I really liked it.
And I thought I thought we committed to the story of Sam and Joe so well.
Yeah. And
we really got sort of into it. I really struggled playing Joe for the second half of our game because I did not like this person at all. And what
Joe was a dick.
He or she, what they were doing felt so unpleasant and unnatural to me, and yet I'd committed to that line of...
But yet there are people out there like that in relationships.
Yeah, what I really didn't like about it was so believable.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I know people who are like this.
Well, and that is why I played my unconditional love. I had a choice of 2 destinies at the end, and I'm like, right, the way that this story has developed, the most apt way for me to finish with this, even though I can't fulfill my destiny, is my character would have this unconditional love for him, because that's the only way that makes sense to the story of the character that has evolved.
And so I think if we look at the story of Sam and Joe, Sam definitely came out sort of with the emotional hardship, the emotional baggage. It sort of began this sort of like, oh, you're sort of an arrogant, self-centered, powerful person, and so am I. Let us combine our power
and see who comes out on top.
But then, as we move towards the middle part of the relationship, the middle part of the story, it's like instead of going towards this celebration of what's good about both of us, it went into this area which was like, now we're sort of struggling for power.
Yeah.
And that definitely was because I'd gotten the dominant destiny for Joe, and I felt like, okay, now I've got a choice here, because I don't like to deliberately play towards achieving the destinies, to deliberately play towards, getting things on the sliders that I need.
Yeah.
I like to use those as sort of guides to help the story emerge.
Along.
And that's what you have to do, I think, if you're really going to enjoy this. But I thought that this gives me a sort of a direction here in the middle. And I thought it would be interesting to see how that would go.
Yeah. I perhaps should have been paying a bit more attention to the destiny cards, but because I was playing a lot with regards to how my character would behave with these traits, and I think that was me getting really involved in the story. And at the start, I was equally an asshole. I wasn't a nice person at the start either.
And that was actually quite lucky that we both wound up being like that. But if my starting traits are secure, pretentious, and impulsive.
Yeah.
But and this is something I'd point out as well. Those are not your only traits.
No.
These are here to give you a sort of an idea about something to aim for in the game, right?
Yeah.
Something to these are the skeleton with which to build the body of your character around.
And I was like greedy, hypocritical, and irresponsible. Mm-hmm. So again, not very nice. But it's almost like a life lesson. Be careful if you're a not very nice person in relationships, because you might end up being dominated.
Well, because I don't think that actually this ends particularly well for Joe either, right?
No.
Even though Joe is the dominant one in the relationship, he's subjugated someone who's not really into that. And ultimately, this is going to end badly for both of them.
Exactly. They're both going to end up in a relationship that is not good for them.
It's not healthy, yeah, for either of them. And, whether it's Sam snaps and becomes violent or eventually wakes up and leaves Joe, something bad it's going to have a tragic... The ending was actually sort of like the beginning of an even more tragic story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally agree.
But it was sort of like the origin story of how they got into this unhealthy relationship.
Yeah.
And that is actually, do you know what, not something I expected.
No.
From this.
I was expecting us to be... Now, I as a game player, I'm not, as you've probably seen from other playthroughs on the channel, I'm not very an aggressive player. But I thought I would lean too much into my own personal traits and how I would play these scenarios. But I really... made a conscious effort to really envelop these traits of this character and play this person that I was playing, and I think that enabled the gameplay to become really interesting. And this is what I really liked about it, and the fact that these changed throughout the game made it so unpredictable. Because these could have been something I could have changed to being kind or being thoughtful or something like that, and that would have changed the whole dynamic of it. And you likewise you could, and that is what I like, that you just don't know where the story can go. At the start you were thinking, my personality might lend this way to a certain play a certain way, I should say, or these might change, and therefore the end result is so varied and can change 3 or 4 times throughout the game.
And what winds up happening is you get these moments that in isolation seem very abstract, but if you are sort of working together to tell this story and you get this emergent storytelling happening, what happens is, you lose a trait and then you get another one, and you find the meaning in it. So when Sam becomes hardened, it's obvious that Sam is hardening their heart to they deep down, maybe even just subconsciously, they know that Joe is taking advantage of them,
but they're willing to let that go,
or they can't. It's too painful to face.
Yes,
so they just start to sort of close themselves off, and even though they're behaving in a way that's unconditional love, they've got this nugget buried so deep inside them that they've built a wall around
it. Yeah, yeah, totally.
And that's so sad. But it's so interesting how that comes out. And it's like when we were talking about when I got the relaxed trait. If I got that at the start of the game, I'd be tempted to make Joe just kind of like a sort of a really
easy
chilled out, like surfer dude type character. But because I got it after we'd already built up 2/3 of this story and it had come to this really dark place, I was like, so now this is actually Joe mellowing out a bit, like sort of turning off the Machiavellian sort of like
because he's already got emotions, Sam in his
it's his hubris kicking in, right? So like I've seen Relaxed and I'm thinking this is actually hubris now. He's like, Sam's under my thumb, and what you get is these scenes which might could mean anything, but because we've brought this story to it. So I had this scene which was like, listen, darling, I sit you down and have a serious talk with you. And this could be like so many different things, right? In a story. But in my mind...
So this was the start of you being manipulative.
This was exactly right. And this was literally not long after I'd gotten the dominant destiny, I think. Or so I was like, okay, so this is now Joe's this is the serious conversation where Joe is testing the waters. Can I dominate Sam? And that's the beginning of that path. Mm-hmm. And that's all stuff that I've brought to the table playing that character. Stuff that, by the way, I absolutely do not condone and think is abhorrent. I would never in real life. I mean, emotional violence is obviously a very real thing.
Yeah,
and
but
this was a story that told the story of an emotionally violent relationship, and that's awful, but also incredible.
I would never stay with you if you were that mean to me.
Well, exactly, and what's interesting is that I almost would have been interested to see if you had a breakup card for Sam at the end. You said you absolutely would have played it in the finale.
Yeah,
but my question is, if you really thought about it...
To be fair...
If you really thought about it, would you?
The thing is, you see, the way that... Now, this was the thing. If I was playing it as in a game, like we were saying at the start, if you're looking at it just as the mechanics of a game, then you're following it as it's played out, then yes, you would. But if you're playing it as
because that would sort of be seen as you winning, right?
Correct.
I mean, I guess in a way that would be Sam winning.
Yeah.
So I guess the question you're asking for yourself is, at the end of this story now...
Has Sam woken up?
Has Sam got the courage and the strength to wake up, In that, was that long hold at the end, Joe's sort of like final sort of moment of taking away, sort of seeming to give Sam what they want, but actually taking away their strength.
Yeah.
Was that moment a wake-up call or the final sort of nail in the coffin?
I was just going to say the final immersiveness of Sam being like fully submerged and in this relationship that he or she can't get out of.
And so I mean, and I don't know if I can ask you to go back and tell me how you would have made that decision now. Because it's so in the moment as well, because it's so immersive. And now that we're sort of past that moment, it's so hard to go back and dissect how those decisions would have played out.
This, to me, just felt right. I knew I couldn't fulfill either destiny, but this just felt, the unconditional love just felt right with how the gameplay was going, like you taking that away, and it's like, well, I'm hard into it,
and this is the thing. Like, it's
I'd still be quite intense, and therefore, if I'm intense and hardened, I'd still have unconditional love for you. And if I was hypocritical, that's more like I'm flitting between.
The hypocrisy is the fact that you love Joe so much, but you know that they're treating you so badly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it says here, you will only be happy if your partner is happy. Unconditional love, but you'll only be happy if your partner is happy. And your partner is happy. So you are happy, but you haven't actually really achieved it because you're so sad inside underneath it all. Whereas Joe is happy because Joe has the upper hand.
Yeah.
And now we've literally just gone back into what we're doing at the end of the finale, which is talking about the emergent story of our particular game.
Yes.
And what I did say is we'd talk a bit more about this as a game. But what is...
But I can't. I don't think you can discuss this like that without giving.
And that's what that's what I'm saying. That is what is so unique and exciting about Fog of Love, is because it creates this experience and this investment, this excitement. So, I mean, to sort of go back to our reviewer mindset here, what I would say is that you absolutely must play this with people who are willing to go to these areas. If you set out with, we are both going to end this game in a loving relationship where we are both happy and it ends on a happy note, and it's definitely going to be that way, and everything else is us losing the game, that is the wrong mindset. Because I imagine it would get
quite tedious.
Well, it's not even that it would get quite tedious, but actually, if, it says you're not allowed to talk about all these things. It says don't, negotiate the best outcome and then just choose that. It's, to a degree, you bring your own story to the cards, and to a degree, the cards tell you what the story is.
Yeah.
And you need to find that balance, right? Because if you try to force the story you want, you can very easily manipulate the mechanics to get what you want out of it. But that actually becomes quite tedious because the mechanics are not super complex because they're so open to interpretation. But if you sort of, allow the cards, because I could see when I got the dominant card, that the other Destiny card I had, which was unconditional love or love story or something, was not only at odds with my pretentious card, the two, I needed to have positive sincerity on this aspect to achieve unconditional love or love story or whatever I had. But also then I had this trait that was directly opposed to that.
Yeah.
I thought, so this destiny is not Joe's destiny because they're too conflicting. But dominant, that is not... I don't have gentleness on my aspect here. I don't have the gentleness aspect on any of my traits at all. So that's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And also, I'd already had a bunch of negative gentleness anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is already syncing up with this card. So I think this is the way Joe goes. And I let the card put me on that path.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to sort of fit with what was happening sort of mechanically. But I didn't say, this is what I need to do to win. This is what is winning in this game anyway.
It's a lot more organic.
Yeah, I just sort of saw how that story was taking shape, and I let that lead the way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I let your actions as Sam and sort of the other things coming out create the rest of that journey, you know? And it could have very easily gone differently, you know? If Joe had intense negative reactions to some of the stuff that Joe was happening, you know, there were plenty of cards in my hand that would have allowed me to sort of seek repentance. And, you know, there was even an opportunity where we could have changed out destinies.
Exactly. And like, if I'd got different destinies, it just so happened that the destinies let the story evolve that way.
And then there were also moments where I thought, this is locked in now. Joe is on this path. And the only way for Joe to really get off this path is for it to sort of be blown up. Like, you know...
get rid of you. Like, because I think I did have...
If you had cards that sort of forced me to change out traits, if you had cards that forced me to change out my destinies,
I think
if
I
you
did.
dumped me,
yeah,
you know, or something like that.
I think I did, but I think I didn't like them. They didn't quite fit into my character, so I got rid of them as minor cards. Because I was like trying to work my traits to my behaviours. And I think if I'd decided, right, I don't like this anymore, I don't like the way that Sam is going, I'm going to try and flip this a little bit to try and I think that's where if I'd paid more attention to the destiny cards than I might have done, that might have occurred in the latter third of the game.
But isn't that interesting how you as a player are not paying attention to the mechanics of the destiny cards? Sam, as a partner, as a character, perhaps not thinking about what they want in the end, has allowed themselves to become manipulated. So there is like a parallel there as well.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
It's deep. But I really like this game. I really do. I didn't know what to expect from it.
Now I feel emotionally exhausted. The more I think about this story, the more sad I realize.
You made it.
I know, but you know, and that's probably like way back in another life. I used to write a lot of. I used to write scripts, and I used to do a lot of narrative writing, and so it's the writer in me wanting to see these characters and how they develop. It's, you know, not wanting to shut off a story just because it's sad. Yeah. You know, and in a way, I would have loved to see Sam's redemption. You know. But that's just not the way this story played out. It
just didn't go this way.
It just didn't go that way.
Sam's destiny was not written that way.
Joe had opportunities to do things that could have, you know, changed the course of the story as well. And I just didn't.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel right for the story for Joe. But had you blown up the relationship, we might have played cards like these, you know? I mean, this is non-specific, right? You need to forgive me. We're not actually talking about... If you read this card text...
It could be anything.
It doesn't tell you what you need to forgive me for.
Yeah.
Just that you need to forgive me. And, you know, if you say, no, I'll never forgive you, then you can swap in either of the breakup cards, right? And I knew I couldn't play this. But, you know, on the other hand, if you'd done something to show that Sam was leaning out of the relationship, I may well have gone this route, you know?
Yeah.
And then given you an opportunity to forgive me. And if you had forgiven me, then I've got this interesting choice of, is that another manipulation, right? Am I going to go right back into the dominant thing?
Yep.
Or am I not, right? Or am I going to actually use that and then maybe, you know, go back onto like a happy track?
And it's interesting. It's like, would Sam have then twigged that they were being manipulated? and then just like his traits, if he'd gone back to being irresponsible or greedy, then he's like going to be a lot more self-absorbed, and then maybe even if he's not aware he's been manipulated, he'll just do what he wants anyway.
They,
she,
he, they,
are
non-gender specific
specific roles.
I thinking about this relationship as well, it could easily have been anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a common story. This, and I'm just looking for a scene here that I had that I can't find it now. But there was a scene that let me go look for the will you marry me card and put it on top. And I almost played that, and then I thought this could go either way again. Like it could be Joe trying to sort of lock Sam in, but it could also be. It could also lead to this story where Sam sort of locks Joe down.
Yeah.
And then I decided it didn't really fit with Joe's motivations at the time.
Yeah.
So, would you play it again?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
It's probably the first game in a while where I've had a really the reaction once the game has ended has been, wow, this is really interesting. I've really enjoyed it. I'd like to see where it went a second time.
It'd be a completely different story.
It would. And I think that what makes it a really interesting and unique game.
And that is why I would buy it, because I don't know of anything quite like it.
No.
It is a very unique and interesting thing to have in my collection. I'm really glad that it's here. It's also, it's also superbly designed. Everything is just really nice quality.
Yes, you can tell, like, these tokens, for example, are really, like,
and if I only had
high-end.
2 complaints, I would say that these cards are super dry. And on the one hand, I don't know how you would make them less dry without maybe railroading the story. Imagery would be too evocative, right?
I think, because they're trying to be neutral.
They're trying to be neutral.
So
on the other hand, they're so clinical. They really look like the help screen from an Apple computer. It's like, they're so clinical. Like, I'm not a graphic designer. I'm sure you've seen the highs and lows of the thumbnails on the channel that I've produced. Some
they're good.
Some are pretty good. Some are terrible. But I would like to see if a designer could maybe make them a little less dry.
Yeah. Like this, for example.
Yeah. Again, like long blonde hair is so. Even if you had like sort of some kind of abstract iconography, like maybe some flowy yellow color in the background, that would be nice. But that's a minor gripe. I've put the box away now, but it is really nicely produced. I guess my other minor gripe is that the inlay, wherever it is clearly made for you to have all the expansions, and I don't. So the cards flip-flop everywhere when I put the game on. But very minor gripes that I'm only mentioning because we're being critical.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm so glad to have it. I would absolutely... my only
other criticism, really... Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, please go.
Is that it is only a 2-person game.
Yes.
And I know that's... a relationship is usually only 2 people.
Can we have the polyamory expansion, please?
Yeah, exactly.
I would totally play that. I'd totally buy that play. That would be so interesting. And it's like you've got like scenes like swap your primary from this person to that person.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be so interesting.
That would be cool. But yeah, so it is a little bit limited in the fact that you can only play it. Like, so if you are having people round, it's clearly not a game that you can play in a group.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely. So what you get is these sort of potentially really meaningful experiences, and you've got to. But you have to play with someone that you can sort of share those experiences with, and that was going to be my other. It's not really criticism; it's more of an observation that you've got to play with someone who's able to get into that mindset, who's able to share those things with you, who's flexible enough that they're able to shelve their personality, because it's quite hard to find someone that's sort of aware enough to play this way, because if you play with someone who really struggles to get out of the mindset of a board gamer person who struggles to sort of shelve the mechanics of the game and allow the emergent storytelling to come out, that can be difficult for people, but it also is quite a useful experience, allowing them to sort of learn that there can be more to games than just mechanics. But on the other hand, you also have to play with someone who's not so sort of, not, what's the word here? Emotionally, I don't want to
Too
say
invested.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking someone whose persona is so strong that they have a hard time adopting other roles. A character, yeah. Playing with someone who's quite theatrical, who's quite an actor, would probably be great. Because they're used to adopting those different emotions.
Yeah.
But someone who's your friend who's very like sort of
one-dimensional.
No. That's far too negative.
No.
Someone, who has a very forceful personality that they might have a hard time setting aside or adapting,
Got you.
Might have a hard time, if you're a very forceful character, that you have a hard time, adopting another persona. If you're the kind of person that really doesn't like to be a certain way or behave a certain way, and those are all the traits you've got at the start of the game, then that
can be quite difficult for
them. Could be very difficult for you. It would make the story difficult to emerge.
Yeah.
Furthermore, it would also make you quite predictable.
Yeah.
If you're just being yourself,
yeah.
then you can't allow the story to come out. Because you've got to let the cards and the game take you places that you might not normally want to go.
Yeah.
And that can be such an interesting and enlightening experience.
Yeah.
But at the
enlightening is a good word.
But at the same time, you have to be prepared to go there. And in a way, like now, having just done that, it is quite draining.
Yeah. I do feel like
it's draining in a different way. It's not draining in a way like Anachrony or a very heavy Euro is draining. It's draining in sort of like in an emotional way. Like I really feel like I've just watched a movie that sort of left me like,
intense.
Like intense. That was a really intense movie, and now we're talking about it and I'm unpacking it and thinking about it. And now I just, I want to go in and have a drink and dissect it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we should go and do that.
That sounds great.
So I hope that this has really given you an insight into Fog of Love and the way it needs to be played. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying this is the unequivocal way to play it. I'm just saying, you've got to let the game take you places that you may not want to always go. Yeah.
Be fearless.
Be fearless. Allow the game to show you sides of yourself and sides of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And you really will see that games are incredible things.
On that note,
thanks for coming on this journey with us. What a journey it was.
It was.
We'll probably be back for something a bit less emotional next time.
A bit lighter.
Original retail version had this box art, but the reprint has got all kinds of cool
different ones,
box arts. Yeah. So be sure to find the one that suits you and your situation, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for a good playthrough. Thought it was good.
Let's go get a beer.
Yeah. All right, guys. See you soon.